want to do now is we're going to just I'm going to show you how we use the if statement. So what we've got a piece of code here now, another function. So we're not going to work with these anymore. We're just going to now call this one function. So is number more than 10? So we've got a function and we've called it is number more than 10, which is this one here. So when we call this function, what I'm going to do is get rid of that for now. We're going to use something called the if statement. And what the if statement does is it checks to see whether or not a particular variable meets a particular condition. So we've got, in this case, we've got greater than. So as well as greater than, I can say things like, don't forget this parameter's coming in, it's a variable. I can also say if number in is less than 10. Right? Or I could say if number in is equal to 10. Now equals is different. We don't put a single equals, we put a double equals in the same way that we did down here. It's a double equals is the same as equals. So, and that's because we use equals normally to assign a variable like that, like this line here basically. So what we want to do, we want to use a double equals sign, and that's the same as equals, and we want to say if it's equal to 10. So we can have things like, we can also have greater than equal to. That's greater than or equal to. So if I said number in is greater than or equal to 10, and it was a value, the number in is a value of 10, then that condition would be true. If I said, I might say not equal to, which the way we do not equal to is like that. So not equal to 10. So if it's anything other than 10, then it'll say, it'll do something like it'll print not equal to 10. Obviously so they're different things, but we want to, for now, we've got a function that we want to say, is it more than 10? So we're going to say, is it greater than 10? And then what we want to do, sorry if I chop that all out. So what we want to do is we're going to check if it's greater than 10. And if it is greater than 10, we're going to print that it's greater than 10. Now for now, I'm going to chop this out. And I'm going to say, right, if the number's greater than 10, then print the number's greater than 10. So I'm going to run that. And we're getting this coming out saying the function is getting called, because we want to know that this function is getting called. So I've just shown that is getting called. If the function is greater than 10 is getting called, then it'll take the number in as a variable, as a parameter in here, and it'll use it as a variable here, and it'll say, is that greater than 10? So when we call it, we're passing in 20. That's the value we're passing in, and that value 20 gets put into there, and that number in, and then 20 gets put into here. So this is like, say, the same as saying, it's the same as saying, we'll put a little comment to say that. So 20 is greater than 10. So what it'll do is it'll take that number 20, which it got from down here when we called the function, and then what it'll do is it'll pass that into our number in, and then this number in is used here, so it substitutes that 20 into that number in and says, is 20 greater than 10, which we know 20 is greater than 10, so it'll print that number is greater than 10 out. If that number, though, when we pass it in is less than 10, we might want to basically, well, we're going to try that now. So we're going to try and make this 5. So we want to pass in the value 5 into here. Well, is 5 greater than 10? No, it's not. So when Python tries to work that out, it'll say, is 5 greater than 10? Well, no, it isn't. Now, every time this if statement gets run, it'll only do what's ever underneath that if statement. In other words, what's past this colon under here. It'll only do that if this condition here is set to true. In other words, if 5 is greater than 10, it won't do this, but if 20 was greater than 10, it would do it. Yeah. So we want to pass in 5. So we're going to test this out now. So we're going to pass in, instead of passing in 20 here, we're going to pass in 5. Ignore these other lines, I'm just confusing things for now. So is number more than 10? Well, we're going to pass in 5 and we're going to run it. And when we do that, you can see that this line is running still because there's no if statement around this. The value, we've got a comment there to say that the value number in is 5. That's just a comment. But when this actually gets worked out, it'll say, right, this gets passed in as 5. Is 5 greater than 10? Well, no, it's not. So it's not going to bother printing out this number greater than 10. And when you look down here, we only see this function more than 10 is getting called. We don't see numbers greater than 10 because it's not being called. It's not being, this isn't being executed, this line, because this condition is not met. Now, if we wanted to make it so that it is met, we can put an else in here. So what that else is doing is it's saying, if a number's greater than 10, then it'll do this line. But if it's anything else, in other words, if it's less than or equal to 10, which is the opposite of greater than 10, then it'll run this line. So we're going to print, because we know if you've got something greater than 10, number greater than 10, the opposite of that is it's going to be less than or equal to 10. So we know less than or equal to. And this else statement, if we run it, we know that 5 is getting passed in, so we say number is less than or equal to 10. And we can actually print that value out as well if we wanted just to confirm it. So we can play it to a plus. We have to do str again, don't forget, because it's a number. And if we call it number in, which is the value, the variable that we're using, and then run that again. So you can see that number is less than or equal to 10. But what we want to do is we want to put a space in there. And just confusing, we'll equal to 10, and we'll put a number is, and then we'll put that, just so it's clear. Then when we run it, so number is less than or equal to 10, number is 5, and then if we change that value and we put 20 in there instead, then we should see the first line in that if statement getting run, which is this. So this wouldn't get run here, this line would get run, and if we run it, you can see numbers greater than 10. So this line is getting run and this one isn't getting run because the number is 20 that we're passing in. And I can actually, again, if I want to know what that value is, I can actually add this bit of text here. Like that. And then run that again. So we actually see the actual value. So number is greater than 10, number is 20. And we can see that coming out. Okay, so that's the if statement. So the only other thing we want to do now is we want to say, well, this is this is the idea of branching. So we've got a function and we're branching. So we go down this line of code if it's greater than 10. We go down this line of code if it's less than or equal to 10, because that's the opposite of greater than 10. So what we want to do now is we want to show that functions can be called anywhere. So what I can do is I can add in the same way we were calling that print washing up stats here. What I could do is I could call functions from within other functions. So I could call that function again from within here. in exactly the same way as I called it from within that main part down here. I can call that now from another function. So functions can call other functions, which themselves can call other functions. You carry on and on and on. So the idea is that functions are reusable bits of code, and that's the important thing to get with all this. Functions are reusable bits of code. So if I run that again, you can see the Arion has washed up the dishes. And that's being called now, not from within the main down here, but it's being called within this is number more than 10. So that's a way of functions calling other functions.